maternal mortality, women dying at giving birth, and it's not a good picture of a country which is ready to sign on onto international treaties but not really put in measures to domesticate them.
And mentioning that, would you say that they don't know, or they're not aware that they can be empowered enough to develop themselves?
You mean the women,
especially in the rural areas, which is a focus?
The issue is, first of all, socio-cultural. The way we are raised and the kind of training we are giving. That's the first. And then secondly is the education. And you realize that we have very high levels of illiteracy over there. And then the cultural aspect. I mean, for an average woman in the city, at least she is exposed to certain things. And so she's better able to either articulate her views or whatever. But when you talk about the rural women, it's a bit difficult for them. And so I think that the theme is very appropriate, even as it is also the theme for the Commission on the Status of Women ongoing now in New York.
And what ways or how do you intend to empower these women with the problems that you just identified or telling us?
I think that a lot is being done already by these civil society organizations that I'm talking about.
Is it?
It is effective, but the challenge of civil society is funding. Now there's a lot of dwindling funds, and so there's what we call pool funding or a basket fund, where all these organizations have to draw from the same fund. So that is the challenge. But the government certainly has obligation, because our constitution stipulates that these things should be taken care of. And Ghana has signed so many treaties, you'll be amazed. We have signed the CEDAW. I mean, CEDAW is in its 30 years now. And the reporting guidelines on CEDAW requires that we put measures in place. For example, affirmative action law, but we still do not have it. But thankfully, MOAC has done some work, and there is some affirmative action still hanging around. But in 1999, we did have some form of affirmative action law. And so if we implement affirmative action, it would really help.
Right. Now, when it comes to issues concerning women, one question that is normally posed is the issue of governance. In terms of looking at Parliament, for instance, the number of women who represent their communities in Parliament, with the figures being low. What do you think can be done more? We always talk about this, ways of empowering women to get more into governance.
Yes, that is true. But in decision-making structures in general, the women's representation is very, very poor. I mean, we have so many boards.
We always cry for equal rights too.
Yes, we have so many boards. And it will surprise you to know that, for example, the legumes board, I mean, about 70% of the agricultural whatever is done by women. They are the ones who deal with legumes and other things, but we don't have a female on the legumes board. There are other boards that do not have females, so that is there. You go to the district assembly, the percentage of women who are there, and then Parliament. I mean, a number of 230 parliamentarians. We have only 19. One died, so we have 19 now. And so, as much as we call for empowerment of women, the government has an obligation. We need to put pragmatic measures in place. I mean, there's no country in the world that has achieved the 30% threshold, the UN 30% threshold, that has not used some form of affirmative action. Rwanda, Uganda, South Africa, all of them have done it. But these African countries have done it after going through some horror. So do we want to go through horror before we adopt that? Maybe we should learn from the Scandinavian countries who had a foresight and saw that this was necessary and then implemented it. And so the affirmative action that we're talking about is very critical.
So besides governments looking at institutions like WILDA, what contribution are you also putting in place to ensure that women reach the level that they are always clinging to or aiming high to get?
Thank you. WILDA has done a lot, just as other organizations. We're still embarking on our legal literacy, where we empower women about their rights based on the law or the constitution, and we have seen some of them claiming it. We have our project, We Know Politics Too, which is aimed at increasing women's participation in governance in all the structures, and then this Rural Women's Empowerment Project. And so as we continue or as we pursue, The only challenge is funding, and we will strive hard to get the funding to do that. But other organizations are also doing it, but the onus lies on the government to put in place the necessary measures to show the commitment that we have in terms of the international treaties.
Right, it's International Women's Day, and it's also an electioneering year. What message would you want to give to our mothers and the women outside, as well as the policymakers as well?
So on the day of International Women's Day, as we commemorate and celebrate women's achievement, their successes, we say Aiko to all Ghanaian women. Everything that you have done, it is not gone unrecognized. We are very proud of you, what you have done, what you are doing. But there's still a long way to go. And so as we encourage our women to continue with the struggle, because others did, we have come, we are continuing. We also want to make a demand upon government now and governments to come that we should show some political will.